And I grew up in a town like Madison, historic town. Our houses were stone from, the oldest was 1670, and then they went up through the 1700s. The house here actually is a true George Washington slept here house. So I'm familiar with the kind of touring aspects of that. So questions, comments, reactions?
Yeah, I have a question. What kind of pre-assessment have you done with the viability of this, and what kind of immediate success, or how do you think this business will escalate, or how will it progress to the level that you need it to be to succeed?
So I started out with, when I spoke with Molly and Monica at the Planning Commission, they said they have a number of 50,000 visitors to Madison, right? And I cut that down to 30,000 because I figure a lot of them have to be coming every year, right? They'll take the trolley once, but they might not take it again. And then I cut that down to 20% to say, 2 out of every 10 people will take the tour. So I think that's pretty conservative, right? If you're coming to Madison and there's a stock tour. I have also been accosting people on the town square who have been hey, are you visiting Madison? If there was what would you think about it? A classic story I met was a couple was visiting because their son was at Rock Eagle. And they were like, yeah, we just kind of been walking around. We don't really know what to do. Would you take a tour? Yes, absolutely. So I've just spoken to, and then I've spoken to, you'll see in a minute, all the people I've spoken to in terms of organizations, businesses, and associations in town. So it appears to be first year profitable with good growth potential. And then there's the events, the weddings, speaking to the wedding venues, that's a struggle in terms of, people getting back and forth to hotels and moving the bridal party around and such like that. So I've done the best analysis that I can, and I'm pretty conservative, and everything I see indicates that it would be a viable business.
Right. And the main reason I ask is that some years ago we had an enterprise of a horse and carriage.
Yep.
That was met with moderate to minimal success, really. I mean, I don't feel that she got quite, and it was a great tour. I mean, great information. I'm sure yours will even be fuller, but I just worry that that there might not be as much. I mean, I want you to succeed for sure, and I think this is a great idea. I just worry that there might not be as much, interest.
I mean, me too.
I know.
I'm familiar with the horse and carriage tour. I think that's a little bit of a different animal, pardon the pun. It's more of a niche business. I mean, you have to, and it's much harder to maintain. And I mean, obviously, it's a lot of complexity there. I also understand that someone tried a trolley business before. My understanding was that individual is from Charleston, and I just didn't get the impression that the execution was great on it. I also think there's a timing factor here. I mean, especially with I've had a lot of conversations. I think one of my most important partners is going to be with the Georgia Safari Conservatory, and I think that the timing is right. But I won't know until and then also for the plan for the business is to, as you'll see, scale with the business as it grows, right? Like I'm not going to I'm not going out and buying everything and going all in. I'm going to be able to build and grow and expand from there. But yeah, anytime you start a business, there's certainly always a risk. But I've done my best analysis, and based on that analysis, I'm willing to give it a try and take the risk. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Okay. So in terms of impact, positive impact, I'm hoping to provide something new and functional to do in Madison. Obviously, I hope when somebody looks on TripAdvisor and says, what is there to do in Madison, that the trolley pops up. I think the trolley itself can be a signature feature to the landscape. I'll talk a little bit about what it's going to look like. And it's going to be quality. My goal is for this to be the best trolley tour in the United States. And I mean that sincerely. I think I've got the personality and the engagement techniques that can make it fun. The tour is going to be a little bit different in that there's going to be an audio-visual system in the trolley, so you're going to hear music, you're going to hear sound effects. So for example, when I pull up in front of Amici's, I'm going to say, okay, look out the window, there's Amici's. Now look at the monitors, and on the monitor, Amici will transform Amici's today to what Amici's looked like back in the day. And then using AI, Amici's will come to life with horses and carriages and things moving around. As we come down the Old Post Road with Sherman's March, you'll hear the sound of a Union Army, the cups rattling, music playing and such like that. So the idea is, even like when I'm at Empire Mills, I'm going to be talking about King Cotton and the role that cotton played, and talking about the invention of the cotton gin. And I'm going to say, now reach into the pocket in front of you. There's going to be a little paper bag. Take out the cotton. And while I'm talking, I want you to get the experience of what it's like to try to get cotton seeds out of cotton and why the cotton gin was such a thing. So the idea is to have it be something that people will talk about and want to come do. And then the vehicle, of course, I also want to deliver useful knowledge about Madison. So I have a meeting next week with the Cultural Center. I'll be doing things like saying, okay, they have a great museum in there. You can see a restored schoolroom. They've got this artifact. They've got these programs coming up. So whatever's happening, I'll be promoting things in Madison. I do feel like the people I've talked to on the town square, if you've ever seen the movie Field of Dreams, when James Earl Jones says, people will come, Ray, they don't know why. Like, I feel like people have come and they're like, I know what I want to do, but I feel like we can provide some guidance and direction and really make a better experience for their visit to Madison. And then again, I just want to provide additional visit. I want to help people we all help each other, raise all boats with one tide, if you will. So I've learned a lot about buying a trolley in the past couple months. So the idea is the goal is to have a 20 to 25 passenger trolley, which would be about 24 to 27 feet long. That's pretty small as trolleys go, to allow for impact, minimize the impact and maneuverability. It'll have a red and black paint scheme aligned with UGA and the Morgan County School District. And then it's like this trolley here is a pretty good representation. It's going to have a little bit of a resemblance of a fire apparatus, which is a nod to the fire of 1869, the 1887 original firehouse, and then my own family's history of firefighting and military service and things along those lines. It'll be air conditioned and heated, of course. I want to have a trolley bell. I'd like that to be, there goes the trolley. Handicap acceptable, of course. And then, because of my background as a firefighter paramedic, I'm going to have an AED on it, full first aid, trauma kit, and then, if anything happens that we were to break down, full ability to, make it a safe scene until I can get help off there. So operated very safely. So in terms of the strategy, this is the one that I'm hoping to purchase. It's up in Brazelton, Georgia. I've been in contact with them, and the idea would be that we would refurbish this. It's in great mechanical condition. It just needs some cosmetic work that they're not capable of doing, which I actually have the resources to do. It'll be a cool story. It's going to be my father-in-law and my son renovating the trolley together, so kind of a neat story there. So the idea would be that I would purchase this in 2025. This keeps my costs under control, so I can, back to the point about the risk of the business, I can be careful about that. And then I would either purchase a new historic trolley. I would need to order that trolley in June in order to have it for next season. There used to be 3 trolley companies in America before COVID. Now there's only one. So there's a 16-month lead time on getting a new trolley. And then I would either replace, the refurbished trolley would go into a second roll, or I would keep it for a second year and purchase a newer trolley. And what I mean by that is, if the Brazelton thing doesn't work out, this is another option I'm looking at, a trolley up in Delaware. It's actually smaller than this. This is the larger of 2, but it looks exactly like this. This was just a better picture. So I would purchase this trolley for 2026 and use that as the tour trolley for a year, and then I would go and purchase that historic trolley for next year. And so either way, the way it's going to end up, I'll either end up with, by 2027, 2 historic trolleys that are identical, like in the first 2 pictures, or I'd have 1 historic trolley, in-town trolley, and then a second, depending on like the shuttle service and such like that. So one of the things you'll see is I have an idea for taking trips down to Athens. That would need a little bit more of a longer term trolley. Questions, comments, thoughts?
So if the council approves this, if you're working with our planning staff, when did you plan to be in operation?
My goal would be to be up and running Memorial Day weekend.
Okay.
I just thought that would be the timing is, I'm phasing out of my current role, and I can dedicate the most of March and the entire month of April and into May. Got to get my CDL. There's a bunch of things I need to do, but I would love to start Memorial Day, have a grand opening like that Thursday, and begin tours Memorial Day weekend.
What I'd like to ask is, and I'm sure you've already looked into it, maybe you can tell us what you think. some of the streets that you will be going down, like Academy and Old Post, are really narrow.
Yep.
And already it's hard to get through if you're coming up to a big truck. So have you looked at that measurement? What's sort of that space allowance for the car that wants to pass? Because there are going to be some impatient people that
Yeah.
want to blow by you.
Yeah, that was, I met with the chief about that. That was my biggest concern, was how it would impact traffic and such like that. In terms of maneuverability, so I'm getting my CDL, but I had one before. I drove fire trucks. And then when I was looking for a job right out of college, I drove school buses for a while, so I've got experience driving big vehicles. So I've been driving around the roads. There's one turn that I had to alter the tour route for because I can't make the turn. And then there's one turn that's a little bit tricky, but every place I've gone, the maneuverability should not be an issue. That's it, I can't be getting a 34-person trolley, right? But for
Right.
a 24-foot to 27-foot trolley, I have not come across anything. The trolley is about 8 feet wide. So if I pull to the side of like Academy Street or the Old Post Road, there should be an opportunity for somebody to pass. But I'm gonna have to just be responsive to the traffic, right? So if nobody's behind me, then I can stop in front of Boxwood. If there's somebody behind me, then I have to go slowly by it. But that will be, that's in terms of impact, that's kind of where I'm, if I have a concern, that would be it.
Right.
So.
Well, maybe that'll slow down traffic on some of those
Yeah.
small streets.
Well, the chief was concerned for me, saying that, hey, I'm worried that the traffic is so slow on North and South Main Street. I'm like, I got plenty to say, so you can go as slow as you want to go. So, other questions, comments? So here's kind of what I'm looking for you folks is I need a place to operate the trolley. It needs to have high visibility. I need to be able to register people and provide tour information, be able to board safe people and debark people safely from the trolley. I'd love to have the option for a shelter. So for example, if it's a rainy day, if I could just put up a 10 by 10 temporary tent for people to stand under while they're waiting for the trolley. And then I don't necessarily need to provide restrooms and refreshments, but I'd like it to be accessible. In terms of it. So in terms of a location, the ideal would be I would love to lease a space in the parking lot adjacent to the Welcome Center in 1887. I spoke to Downtown Madison, Sarah. She's like, that's up to the city, but she was very enthusiastic about it. There's plenty of room there. You can see I made a little mock-up of it. It's right next to the Welcome Center, so it's kind of a logical place. And then as you come through Madison, there's this pretty trolley sitting there on the corner. It's off the road, so it's safe. There's plenty of room to embark and debark people. The tour would originate, I want the tour to originate and end in the town square. And then for my own interest, just being someplace visible is gonna be super important. And so when I met with Molly and Monica, they indicated that there might be a willingness of the city to lease an area or space. I've got, so my ideal would be that location, if you would consider that. Preferred somewhere on the town square. That just seems like the right place to operate. I think I really need to be somewhere right in the immediate downtown area. The folks at the Georgia Conservatory Safari were kind enough to offer to let me operate from there. I'm like, I don't know that that's gonna work, right? I'm hoping to help promote you by being here. And then, so that's kind of in terms of a location. Whoops, let me stop there. But again, this was the slide where I wanted to not be presumptuous, right? I'm not making any assumptions. I just came here to find out what's possible and make this request and, pay a fair lease fee for it and, see what's possible, so.
I don't know if our council will have an objection with you working with our planning staff along with our Main Street Director, Sarah. And they could give you some ideas and suggestions and maybe talk to our council and hopefully we can get some great ideas about what you want to do downtown and where you want to be.
That's awesome. So what is the is it the planning? Is it Monica and Molly?
Monica and
Okay,
Molly.
great. So I'll follow up with them immediately after this. So, okay, great, thank you. To the business that you were asking about, so there'll be public tours. They're gonna be 60 to 90 minutes. Biggest challenge is gonna be, I think they're about 4 hours now, so I've gotta get that down to, something in 60 to 90 minutes. I'm thinking a Tuesday through Saturday 4-tour day schedule. I tried to do the timing so it's kind of off hours. Like, so for example, to miss that 3 p.m. drop off for school, miss the morning rush hour, try to minimize the traffic impact. And on the traffic impact, one of the things that I've been researching is, for example, the Joshua Hill House. I don't have to park in front of the Joshua Hill House on North or South Main Street. I can park adjacent to it on Hill Street, and you can look at it from this direction. So I've identified a number of places on North or South Main Street where there's an opportunity to not be on the road, to try to minimize the traffic input. Another example would be the Confederate Memorial, can get off of South Main Street there, turn around and come back, and then sit on that road, next to the memorial and talk. And from there, you can talk about, hey, when we turn out, there's going to be a house on the right or left. So I've done a lot of strategy around minimizing the traffic impact. Private tours would be another part of the business. Supporting public and private events. I understand that the house tours, getting people around has become a little challenging, so that might be something that I can help with. Just in general, transportation service as needed. I mean, I don't know where this goes long term. Maybe there's an airport shuttle in my future. Maybe I run a shuttle back and forth to the safari park, but instead of being a trolley, it's a van painted to look like a zebra. I mean, I'll just follow the business where the opportunity, leads itself. Sports events. So I don't know if you're familiar. There's a hockey team in Athens, Georgia, called the Rock Lobsters, and I've been talking with them about, bringing groups down there to their hockey games. And I've done some market research and have interest in what would be called a UGA game day experience, where instead of going to Athens, you come to Madison the night before a game. You stay in a Madison hotel. You get picked up on the trolley. The trolley brings you to Athens. You come into Athens on the trolley, bell ringing, flags flying. You park in a spot that I have leased. There's a catered tailgate party waiting for you. You've got TVs on in the trolley. They're air conditioned so you can watch games and such like that. You go to the game. After the game, I give you an hour to go out in Athens. You get back in the trolley. You come back. You spend the night in Madison, and you drive back to Atlanta the next morning. And I've talked to some people who would be my target audience, and they're very interested in that. So. And then in terms of, we're going to do some very limited merchandise sales. My wife has some great artistic talent, so we'd like to have, this is the 2025 or the 2026 Madison Trolley t-shirt or Christmas ornament. It's not going to be, we're not doing snow globes, you know what I mean? It's going to be a little bit more like that. Employees will be mostly family members. I've got a healthy nieces and nephews and sons and daughters who will be completely capable of operating this. We'll all be in uniform, tan slack shorts or skirts with black shirt and a red logo. And I can really limit and overhead the fixed costs. I have in-house capabilities. My brother-in-law is an AI expert. My father-in-law has both the knowledge and resources and equipment needed to restore the trolley. My son is free labor, so I've got a lot of opportunities to limit costs. And like I said, my conservative projections seem to indicate viability, and I'll align investment and growth. The biggest thing that causes small businesses to fail is overexpansion, right? So I'm not going to go out and buy 2 brand new trolleys and go all in. I'm going to grow logically, because it doesn't help any of us if the business doesn't work. The trolley will be my biggest advertiser, right? That's my sign, so no signage needed there. We'll have a website and digital marketing firm. I'm going to focus very much on referrals and recommendations, Google reviews, coming up in searches and such like that. Again, the strategic win-win partnerships, getting visibility at different attractions around town, and working with the various tourism entities, Georgia, Morgan County, Madison, whoever I can partner with. And then people have suggested to me that there might be opportunities with the film industry. We'll see about that. But just looking to do the different ways that I'll grow the business and be very intentional about growing the business. But do you have a question?
No.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? So I'll just run down. This is where I am with kind of my strategic partners. If there's a check next to it, I've already engaged with them and they've already expressed interest in partnering. I'm currently in the process of talking to event venues, obviously here today, meeting next week with the Morgan Cultural Center, and then these are the folks that I've identified so far that I still need to connect with and speak with as possible, collaborative efforts and cross-marketing functions. Not by any means meant to be an exhaustive list, but just a list of where I'm kind of in terms of forming strategic partnerships to date. And then development timeline. So I've secured the domain I'll use for the digital presence. The business is legally established. I've hired a digital marketing firm. I'm here today for this presentation, which will determine my base of operations and the necessary permits and licenses. I've got the paperwork filed, but I live right outside the city limits, so I need an address. I have one I can use, but I just wanted to kind of figure that out. It seemed, if everything goes well today, then I will be ready to go ahead and purchase the trolley within the next 2 weeks. And then there's just all the stuff that has to be done to make the business work. And again, the goal is to get up and running in Memorial Day weekend. So that's the business aspect of the presentation. I can share with you kind of the working model of the tour if you're interested, but I want to be sensitive to everybody's time, so I can go over the tour quickly with you. I can go into it in detail, whatever you'd like to see. I'll leave it there, or maybe just answer your questions. I'll let the room decide.
We have a sort of pretty long agenda for this morning, so, but you'll be back before us, I assume, pretty soon, won't you?
I'm sorry?
Once you get with staff, you're gonna come back before us again?
Yeah, I was even thinking, I went to a seminar at the Cultural Center about the dual education system, and in that room, I was thinking maybe it would be nice as I get closer to just invite the community, right? Just rent out that hall, assuming they rent it out, and just provide a presentation. But I'd be more than happy to come back and, tell you where I am and give you an update on a regular basis and maybe share the tour at a later date.
That'll be great.
So, okay. Any other questions or comments?
That's pretty
All right.
thorough.
Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you so much.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate your support, and I'll follow up on that location, and then I guess coordinate with you in terms of when to come back and such like that.
Yes.
So, all right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so much, sure. Chapter 86, Vegetation, Green Space, and Natural Resource Revision, Molly. Wow.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you so
Good
much
morning.
for having us here this morning. I'll be brief, then Ben's going to follow up with a little background, and Jill will finish off with some public-facing elements of this tree ordinance update. It came to our attention earlier or middle of last year that we were missing some key elements in our tree ordinance for tree protection. So we took a look at this, that's specifically the site density requirement, which Ben will talk about in just a moment. But in doing so, we did take a look at this with fresh eyes to see if there were any other updates that needed to be made. So the two primary updates that you'll see here are the site density requirement. That's that baseline of what we want all properties to maintain. The other big update here is actually expanding this to not only non-residential properties, but residential properties. So just keep those two things in mind. One is a fix, and one is actually expanding this to apply to all properties within the city. Just to remind you of why we want to protect our trees, this is actually in the ordinance, but some items that are not here that I think are really important to be mindful of are trees clean our surface water. That surface water goes into our streams. Those streams are, we pull water from those streams, and the cleaner we can make that water, the better it is for our public works and those processes. It also helps with this heat island effect, right? So the more areas develop, the hotter they get. And so the more that we can conserve green space and trees on that green space, the better off we are in terms of keeping our temperatures moderated. So again, these are some elements that were added, but the two to keep in mind are that SDR, that was what was missing, and that expansion to all properties within the city. So I'm going to hand this over to Ben, and he's going to give you a little background about how we came to this site density requirement.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, just a quick overview of some of the changes. So the focus was really trying to identify that the ordinance talks to, there's a need. I'm just going to put that down. There's a need to identify, what is the actual tree requirement for each parcel. But as we were looking at that, we recognized that there was a couple of definitions that would be helpful to add as well. So diameter at breast height is the typical measurement of how you would measure trees. And so that's 4.5 feet up. You're doing the circumference or calculating the diameter by, dividing that by pi, or, for someone who just has a ruler, they'd be able to just, eyeball kind of the size of a tree. I will point out that the permitting process that Jill will kind of talk through a little bit more is only applying to trees that are 6-inch DBH or higher. And so a quick visual for that is if you kind of put your fingers around a tree, that's about 6 inches in diameter. So, so we've added that definition, as well as just kind of expanded some of the definitions of various types of trees. Having worked professionally on providing tree plans for other municipalities, especially Athens, there's just kind of a need to, be a little bit more specific of what types of trees there are. And then the site density requirement itself, the next slide, we'll talk about that. But the definition of that was added to the ordinance as well as tree credits. So the requirements for the tree protection plans, ultimately these edits are going to give the planning department the ability to really kind of have weight to be able to kind of enforce, what the tree requirements are. So the SDR of 25 units per acre, we'll hop over to that and look at that chart. But ultimately, the requirements for how many trees are really going to be needed on a property to fulfill the ordinance is very comparable to what was discussed before you all a couple of years ago. And then the tree removal permit, a little section was added about that as well. So this is the site density requirement. So currently, as the ordinance is, it mentions, a property needs to meet the site density requirement and then does not really specify how to calculate that out. So basically, there's 25, tree credits per acre that is needed, and this is the breakout of how various types of trees would be calculated to meet that. So obviously, if you had a 0.5 acre property, you would take 25 divided by 2, and then you would look and just kind of make sure that the trees on that property would add up to the credits needed for that. So this is the table showing the tree type, the required planting size, the mature size, and the credits per tree. And then I'll pass it over to Jill to kind of talk a little bit more about the permitting application or process.
Good morning. So the tree removal permit application is meant to be as user-friendly as possible. Let me go to the next page. So the first half of the application is really just informative. It gives a little description of why we need this application, why trees are important. It also has my contact information at the top, so people can call or email me at any time with questions. And then there's also information going back to the ordinance if people need more information. And then finally, there are some sources that are referenced in the ordinance, so people can look up native trees or other resources that might help them as they make their decisions. And then as they scroll down, the second part of the application is very easy, should only take a few minutes. They're just providing information about their property and then their tree removal plan. And then finally, this is the last part of the application. You get to do some arts and crafts. This is actually really common in all tree ordinance permit applications across Georgia. So just about all of them, as we were doing our research, we saw municipalities were requiring this tree protection plan. And it's really just a helpful tool for the planning department to make sure that people plan to meet their minimum SDR. So basically people can go to Google Maps or QPublic and draw out their structures and their impervious surfaces. And then they can also sketch their existing trees, any problematic trees that they need to remove. And then if they need to meet their minimum SDR, they would show where they plan to plant their new additional trees. And this brings us to the application fee. I was looking at different municipalities across Georgia. The fees range from $25 to $75. Outside of Georgia, I've seen it go up to $150. So it's really up to y'all what you deem necessary for Madison. And for educating the public, we think this is really important. We don't want people to feel that we are intruding on, their property or their business, but we're really just trying to protect our tree canopy. So prior to the adoption of this ordinance, I submitted a newsletter insert to the Main Street newsletter. And this was to just introduce the permit application, rephrase the importance of existing trees in Madison and protecting them, while educating residents on the upcoming ordinance changes, and then emphasizing the importance of native tree plantings. And after the adoption, we would try to provide more education by explaining the benefits of old and native trees and keeping them in Madison, as well as offering any assistance with tree protection plans or the application in general. And then also educating residents how to measure their circumference of their trees so they can deem whether or not they need to submit this application or not. But we would be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
So if someone wants to have a tree removed from their property, who makes that decision? Because you guys look at the tree, who makes that decision?
The planning staff would make that decision. So we
Okay.
would do a tree, we would review their tree protection plan, and then either approve or deny it.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, but.
Yes.
But if somebody wants to remove a tree and this ordinance is in place, y'all wouldn't say, I'm in a form of a question, you can't remove that tree. You would just say, in order to be compliant with the ordinance, you would need to replace it with yada, yada.
Yes.
Or if the tree's in danger or dying or
Yeah, we.
leaning.
In the ordinance, we've included if there is an emergency, that people can go ahead and remove that tree if they deem it an emergency, but they would still need to fill out this application and prove that they would be meeting the SDR, the minimum SDR.
And so if somebody had a home and it had one tree on it worth 2 points, and they wanted to remove that tree, they would come and fill out an application, and y'all would say, if you do that, then we need you to plant back this, or to get to 25 points, is that right?
Or the SDR is 25 per acre, so if they're a half acre,
Yeah.
it's half, yeah, but they would have to meet that requirement. As far as the emergency, because I saw that quizzical look, the emergency means that it can be taken down immediately. The permit application is retroactive, so they would take it down and then come back within 30 days and say, hey, I had to take this tree down for an emergency, and we would just look at their tree protection plan and make sure they're still maintaining that site density requirement.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
So if we had a storm in town and I had a pecan tree to fall in my yard,
Yeah.
of course, we would go ahead and get it up.
Absolutely.
But when you come out and do an assessment, are you gonna tell me what type of tree I need to plant in my yard?
No, so you get to choose what type of tree and where. We're just saying there needs to be a baseline of a certain amount of canopy in every yard.
Even if it wasn't there prior to having a
That's
tree
correct.
removed.
And that's actually not something that we have considered in terms of if there is perhaps a yard with no canopy or one tree, and there is removal of that tree, say it's an emergency, or they just want they don't like that tree and they want it gone. If there is a allowance for the, if they simply have to replace it back to the existing SDR, or they have to bring it into compliance with that 25 SDR per acre, so that's absolutely something we can look at. Because that would be a bit of a lift for an individual property owner to take it from replacing one tree to planting 3 trees, yeah.
So, if I may?
Sure.
I was gonna ask about that, so to grandfather in, I mean, I know that I've got some neighbors that have, totally taken down their fabulous trees, and there's nothing in the front yard. I mean, they got 2 now, but, their canopy, I don't think they would be, even now, I think we have residences that don't meet the
Right.
25 credits per acre, so,
I actually think that most of our properties do, not to say that there aren't some that don't.
yeah.
The 25, and at the next time we hear this, we're gonna have some images for you to kind of show you what that would look like. The 25 SDR is a pretty minimal requirement. If I'm not mistaken, for a half acre, it might be more like 2 canopy and 1 understory tree for a half acre. forest in your yard.
Yeah.
If it's a quarter acre, it's maybe a canopy and an understory. Most properties within the city, very few don't already have that in existence. But we would definitely look at, for those that don't, what would be the requirement to bring that up to compliance? Or would they be required, would they just have to meet the existing baseline?
And I'll just add, in our green space meeting when we've talked about this, Green Space already does a lot of programs trying to help get trees out to residents of the community, and we, talked about how this might actually give us some more opportunity to reach out to certain communities where there's a need, to make sure they're, knowledgeable about some of these opportunities to get, affordable trees to their properties as well, so.
Okay.
Can you tell me the difference between a canopy and an understory?
Absolutely. So canopy's big, understory small. So canopy's like an oak. They get 30 to 40 inches in diameter. Understory's like a crepe myrtle or a serviceberry.
Dogwood.
Dogwood, yes.
I have, if I may, one more. So, what does enforcement look like?
Like it does for any of our other compliance. So if someone were to cut a tree, we have had instances of trees being cut recently. And if we receive that complaint, we would send out our code compliance officer. They would let them know that there is a tree permit process. We would walk them through that process. There's no, hey, you get an extra $25 because you didn't comply. It's, hey, we're bringing you on board and letting you know what the requirements are. Again, though, we are complaint-based, so we would have to receive that complaint
Got you.
to then go out and let them know that there is that requirement.
And then I have one more question. Will you be offering TTCRs? That would be transferable tree credit rights?
We had not considered that, I'm not sure.
Because I can offer some.
You can, yes, you can offer a lot of those. We had not considered that. I do believe we've got perhaps some, and it's been a minute since I've read this, but we might have some options for people who can't meet the requirement for planting on their own property to pay into the land development fund for planting on other in other areas.
That was gonna be my question. What about the neighborhoods that they can't possibly have that many trees, but they own their homes?
Yeah.
I think of
Small
Green Meadows.
compliance, yeah.
I'm
Wait.
sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I was saying like some alternative compliance with that ordinance. So saying if you can't plant it here, you can pay $100 and that can be planted somewhere else for you.
You said pay $100?
Or I'm just throwing out a number. I'm thinking about how much a tree cost is typically about $100 to $125.
That's part of my thought process, is what about the neighborhoods that can't even afford $100 to pay for a tree? What are we gonna do with those citizens that cannot meet those requirements because they can barely pay their utility bills?
I think most of those properties do already meet the requirement.
Okay,
So if they were coming in to remove a tree and we said, hey, you need to replant a tree, we can absolutely look into whether there are opportunities for a reduction of cost or some sort of programs to assist with property owners who might struggle to meet
Okay.
that need. Yeah.
But I think what I understand, though, is if we've got some residences that already don't meet those guidelines, they don't have to bring their residents
look
up
into
to
that.
that
Yeah, we'll
guideline.
look into
They can
that.
just
Yeah.
read it. But I wonder if we could even, like, use part of the Ricketts program, or even establish some other
There's the
tree-friendly
Lambert-
programs. Here
We've got
comes
two
Phil.
programs now, Ricketts and Lambert. So Ricketts does have a cost, Lambert doesn't. So those
Okay.
are free trees every
Okay.
year. We have 100 trees that we give out. And so if, and I will say that as far as planting, individuals wouldn't be required to plant immediately. We would want them to plant during a time that's appropriate, and that is in the, late winter, which is when all of our programs are available for people to utilize.
Okay.
Yeah,
So maybe
Thank
we
you.
could even prioritize,
absolutely.
folks that have need-based trees,
Yeah.
and get those done first.
Yeah.
Great. Good
Yeah, I want to
question,
stress
Carrie.
that we want to make this as easy as possible for people. Like any other application process, we are there to assist them throughout the entire thing. We're not going to say,
Yes.
here's a link, do it yourself. It's If you need help, come in, we'll sit down with our computers, we'll help you fill it out, we'll help you draw this out. And then we'll absolutely let people know about those programs that we already have in place to assist them.
Right.
Thank you.
And just one thing to add, I think this will help the planning staff have the ability to ensure that if there are developments and housing projects happening, they have the ability to ensure these trees get in, on the front end.
Okay.
And avoid
That's
scenarios
good.
where you maybe do have neighborhoods that do not have trees and canopy.
Yes,
So-
thank you.
And I think the most important thing is our community to know that you're here to help them, right?
That's why that education is going to be
Right,
so
about
important.
educating.
We want people to know way ahead of time that this is a regulation. When someone does call within a complaint and our code compliance goes out, or Jill gives them a call, it's a friendly call. It's not meant to sort of beat them over the head. It's, hey, we've got this new regulation. It's really important for us because of these reasons. Come on in, let's help you through this process, and we'll get you a tree, and everyone can enjoy that tree canopy.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
So you're asking this council for approval for you to move forward with this, or
Well,
just
so we
information?
will make, we'll look into some of those concerns, specifically about if a property does not currently meet the SDR, what would be the requirement for bringing it up to compliance? Or would there be, or would they just have to meet the baseline that already exists on their property? And we'll make sure that there's adequate language in here for need-based provision of trees through our existing programs. So we'll look at this, but we do plan on, with those additions and changes, to bring this to you at your regular meeting for consideration.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you so
All
much.
right, thank you.
Great report.
Awesome.
Sure. Phil?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Fortuitous to follow the Green Space Ordinance recommendations. Thank you. I'd like to give the annual report of the Green Space Commission, and it's a real pleasure to be able to do that, and I appreciate the time for us to share our efforts. First of all, I'd just like to credit the Green Space Commissioners. The work that they do, both in their monthly meetings and outside the meetings, is really the ability to bring all of these successes forward, and also to express gratitude for the mayor and councils and John's support, because we come up with the ideas and we can help write a grant and we can encourage a grant to be submitted, but then once we get that, then the planning staff has to execute that. So it's a great team effort. We've added this last year 25 acres in a conservation land, which is out near the airport. Our long-term dream is to be able to have really the equivalent of Horse Branch Creek. That preserve, Horse Branch Preserve, have a counterpart in the other quadrant of the city. So to have two 100-acre tracts would be our vision. So we're making progress on that. We were able to obtain an $18,000 grant for invasive species. So again, similar to my previous comment, when we have a success, it also requires more support and more effort. So we have to get rid of the invasive species when we have a preserve, because when we put that with the Athens Land Trust, part of that requirement is that we mitigate the invasive species. And some of these lands have been fallow for 50, 75, 100 years. And there are some severe plots of invasive species. And if you try to just even walk through, let alone try to cut down some of them, the thorns are 4 inches long. So it's really a challenge, let alone the vines and the kudu, et cetera. So that 18,000 grant will help us get experience and know how much it would cost for a contractor and how much effort it takes for volunteers. We obtained a $3.1 million GDOT Alternative Transportation Grant, which is similar to the one that we're currently working on with GDOT for the train depot and up to the park. This one would be for Horse Branch. So Horse Branch will be our key network of wooded trail opportunities for residents and visitors, and this will open that up. So I would say in 5 years, we'll have that 100-acre plot completely developed with miles of trails. We had 10 ricketts tree plantings that were awarded and 6 that were planted this year. And we had 83 right-of-way trees planted and 104 roots and shoots, which is the new program through Chris Lambert's endowment. So really to the ordinance, 10 trees awarded. That was the most applicants we've had in years. So now it does cost, there's a cost sharing, but we're not getting a large swell. And when I talk to other cities, they don't understand it. Why we have such low request applications for subsidized trees. The same thing with the roots and shoots. It's this year, Kebby Holden really helped us get into the schools, and we got those filled. But the general public, other communities will advertise once, put one thing on the website, and they'll get 300 applicants for a free tree. So our residents, that's one of the reasons why we'd like to socialize the new ordinance, is help to grow the awareness of native trees and the programs that are available and create more interest for those.
Phil, can I ask a question?
Sure.
May I?
Sure.
Mayor? Are you referring to the low interest for the ricketts trees?
Yes.
Well, it's interesting because my understanding is when folks have kind of at the last minute said, oh, I want a ricketts tree, then they're all given out. That the application, there's no more trees to be applied for.
Okay, if people feel that way, that's a miscommunication.
Okay.
So there's an application deadline, and it's really to Molly's point, we need to cut the tree applications off for that ricketts program so that we can get them ordered and planted in January and February.
I see.
Because there's also a window for the streets department in January and February to be able to plant trees. And they did a great job this year. They got them planted earlier and more complete in terms of a short time frame than we ever had. So that's just another area where our efforts create work for other people. But when they apply for the tree, then we look at the applications. Sometimes they're not residents of the city, property in the city, so that obviously disqualifies them. But we take all the applicants and then select who would be the best fit based on the need if they've got one in the past. But in the last 5 years, everybody who's applied got a tree.
So what more or less is your upper limit for approving applications if they are
Yeah, thanks for that
suitable?
question. The ricketts program is an endowment, so we take whatever the interest is off of that fund, and that should, on average, get us between 8 to 10, 8 to 12 trees per year
Okay.
for ricketts. For the Roots and Shoots program, that's designed for kids. That's open for county residents as well. And that should, because we're using smaller saplings, there's no application process. Just show up with a kid and you get a tree. That's literally what happens.
Oh, that's
Borrow
cool.
one.
Pardon me?
I really like that idea.
Yeah.
So I would like to see if we can get the kids involved and figure out how we can get some there. Some of the kids, I can't speak for them because I would like for more information to get out about that.
Well, we go to the schools, we hand out flyers, and so here's an example. So this is just factual. So we had 119 applicants that said, I want a tree, from the schools, through the schools. That's how we promoted it. 50 showed up on Saturday. So they know about it. It's not the Roots and Shoots this year was a grand success.
Okay.
Last year, we advertised, we had field trips
Yeah.
that came over and saw the trees at
Yeah.
the historic train depot.
Yeah.
Nobody showed up the next day from that group. None of the kids told their parents, or the parents didn't come do it. I get all the other things about busy and communication between parents. They knew about it. 120 knew about it enough to sign up for it, and they didn't all show up. So it's just the way the public functions. I'm not being pejorative. I'm just being factual. We all as a community, and with your support, we offer great programs. Ricketts Tree Program is virtually unheard of. When we go to a tree conference, we can't find any other city that has an endowment. There are a couple that Monica and the planning staff have researched, and Jill, in the United States. It's virtually unheard of. Now we have two. Now we have one that you apply for, another one you just show up for. We're offering great programs. It has nothing to do with my leadership. It's just, we have great programs. So being a tree city for 35 years, having the tree ordinance, it's all part of a process, and we hope to improve the awareness through that. So we get more applicants to Ricketts. But that will have a limit. There's right now it's $125 cost share for Ricketts, but the city comes out and plants the tree.
Yeah.
With Roots and Shoots, you plant your own tree, but it's a 1 gallon or 2 gallon size tree. Ricketts is a really nice tree. The volunteer group, the volunteer corps that Carl Scott has recruited, it's now a vibrant 38. So the volunteer corps helps clear out those invasive species, helps get the trails ready. We're trying to develop a strategy where we improve the size of the volunteer corps, because that helps feed the commissioner nominees and commissioner candidates for green space. And we can have some volunteers who could perform routine maintenance, because we're already running into, it hasn't been a lot, but there'll be a tree down or something happens on the trail, and it's easier for the planning staff to call us on GCC and have a volunteer go out and fix that,
Yeah.
instead of having to go through Sean and asking for the streets. I mean, they've got other priorities, and moving something off the trail, in my opinion, isn't a high priority. But as you all know, you get the calls from the people who go to the trail and want to know how come we're not maintaining our trails. So we want the volunteer corps to be able to help to take that relief off of the city staff. We've opened up the 5 miles of sidewalk with the wayfinding for the sidewalk paths for both people who have mobility challenges, visual impairment, make that easier. We opened up President's Walk, which is almost a 1/4 mile in length. We had 4 awardees to our annual Fall Fet in October. And I think what's kind of driving this, just great success, and again with Rebecca, who you heard from earlier on another topic, and with Kevy Holden, a 3-fold increase in social media and a 5-fold increase in the exposures in the Morgan County Citizen. So I think we're really in a good spot to continue this momentum and the success with what we have planned. And again, in our annual report, we always try to just focus on last year, which is really hard, because we know what's going on and already success we've had this year. But it's really been good. And with that, I open it up for any questions or comments.
Well, we certainly thank you and your
Oh, thank you.
commitment for
My
what you
pleasure.
do
Thanks
our
for your support.
community.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Good work. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Georgia Department to Protect Grant, our chief.
Mayor, Council, thank you. So this is actually the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities Connect and Protect grant. A little bit long to fit on one line. Earlier this month, the sheriff approached me. The sheriff's office is in the process of applying for this particular grant. And what it does, in a nutshell, is it allows for a behavioral health clinician to work both in the jail and in the community that will be freely available for our department to use. So we reap the benefits from this, and the sheriff's office manages it for us, to allow for a mental health clinician to come either on scene to help deal with folks in crises, to do follow-ups in the community, to proactively make sure that people are getting services, taking their medications and the like, to prevent a crisis from happening in the
Yes.
future. And in furtherance of his grant application, he requested that mayor and council sign a letter of support to make their grant application stronger. I believe Ms. Deborah provided all of y'all with a copy of it. He called me earlier this week to see when we might be available to get council's signatures on that. I told him I would like to get it to him by next week. So we would appreciate if y'all review that application and if you would be willing to sign the letter of support. We would be very much appreciative. It'll save us a lot of time on resources, and I think it's
Amazing.
to the benefit of the community.
Absolutely.
If y'all have any questions about how that works, I'm free to answer them right now.
I think the letter says it all, and I think we have a council who's ready to sign this for our community. That's great.
Wonderful. Well,
Sure.
Deborah, I'll work
We'll
with
sign
you
that
to
before we
get
leave,
to
Deborah.
get a copy of that.
Yeah,
Oh,
Thank
perfect.
you.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Welcome.
That
I'm
is
excited.
like the top of my list for our community, is
Yes,
for
ma'am.
mental health to ride with our policemen and our deputies. So I am greatly appreciating your efforts and the county efforts. I've been working and planning for this for about 5 years, and to see it happen, thank you so much.
Okay, so this is a good first step. Hopefully the application's strong, and I'm not
Yes.
sure what the timeline is, but once I find that out, I'll let y'all know.
And I'm just glad that us chief and sheriff are able to work together on this to make this happen.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Sure.
All right,
I think you're on the agenda for the Police Foundation.
I am.
next.
We would love to form a Madison Police Foundation. The purpose of a foundation, it operates as a nonprofit organization to support the police department through private funding and community partnerships. It helps us to finance things like training, equipment, community outreach programs, officer wellness initiatives, when the cost extends outside of what the city's budget is. So it allows us to get those programs in instead of having to wait to try to build up the money for that. Currently, Georgia law allows municipalities to establish nonprofit foundations that support public safety. It would operate as a 501c3, which allows tax-deductible contributions from the public to it. And also, recently, and Jay, if you can provide some guidance, if I'm speaking out of turn on this, it allows our citizens and businesses to divert their tax burden from the state's general fund and redirect it to the foundation while still meeting their tax liability. Is that correct, Jay?
That is correct. There is a statewide limit, though.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So it gives our citizens a voice to use their tax dollars instead of going to the state coffers to be
Yay.
utilized locally, which is
Oh,
a
that's
great
good. benefit
benefit to us.
That
So
is
they're not paying twice, they're just re-diverting their money. So that is a wonderful incentive for folks to try to donate to the foundation. Oversight, the foundation would operate under a board of directors. I would work with the city manager to see if we can try to get a board of directors, at least a representative from each district. I'm thinking around the 5 to 7 range for people being on the board. I would not be part of it. It would be a completely independent foundation that's outside of the city government that helps support our mission and foster relationships with the community. There are several cities like Atlanta, Savannah, Marietta, Athens, Stockbridge that are reaping the benefits of these police foundations in order to obtain training and equipment that extend outside their respective budgets. Foundation will absolutely foster a stronger connection with the community to help us engage the community by funding outreach programs like youth mentorship, crime prevention initiatives, neighborhood safety projects, things like that that we may not be in a position to fund monetarily. The foundation can help step in and absorb some of those costs. Regarding officer wellness and retention, officer wellness is a big on my list of things to do. We have to take care of our own if we're going to expect them to take care of our community. So being able to fund and support officer mental health programs, wellness initiatives, perhaps even scholarships for professional development can improve our retention because we invest a lot of money in our folks and subsequently improve morale. So people want to stay here and we want to attract those with a lot of experience. Additionally, our foundation should be able to provide immediate financial support if we have officers that suffer a personal crisis, a natural disaster or something like that, including line of duty injuries, make sure that they receive timely assistance and that they have the financial support and backing to help get them on the road to recovery. So unlike government budgets that often have restrictions and lengthy approval processes to go procure equipment, if we find a critical need for equipment or training or something like that, the foundation can provide an immediate source of revenue with which to pay for that. Now that doesn't mean that we can lower our training budget in order to have the foundation pick up on that, because I believe that would not be ethical. You know, it does help us fund those immediate sources. And also, any police foundation would be, have a forward-facing public transparency page. So the citizens know, hey, this is how much money that the foundation has had donated, and this is where it's going. They'll be responsible and have to file the reports just like any other charitable nonprofit. So, in summary, I believe establishing a law enforcement foundation will provide our department and our community an opportunity that greatly enhances public safety beyond what our city budget currently allows. Leveraging private funding, grants, community partnerships, we can invest in the critical needs like officer wellness, advanced training, and community engagement activities. So I'd really appreciate your support in this, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Who will oversee these funds?
It would be a private nonprofit board.
Nonprofit?
Yes, so we would take recommendations to have the initial board of directors, and again, I would like to have folks that with a good head on their shoulders for perhaps nonprofit and have a public safety mindset. Recommendations from council for the initial board of directors would be fine. They would establish their president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, just like a general nonprofit board would operate. And if we have a request, I can go to them and say, hey, you know, I need 2 patrol cars, and we're not in a position to fund it. There's a critical need. If the money is in the foundation's coffers, then they can authorize the expenditure of that. If we want to have a community event over at Andrews Park, the foundation could help fund that. Or if we want to offer a scholarship, if the foundation's in a financial position where it can offer such, it can fund that. So it's not just for buying equipment and training, but it's also
For other things.
for the community as well.
So will our attorney need to draft some kind of draft for us, or what? What's the procedures?
I don't think so.
That will be at the council's discretion, I believe, about who does that.
Yeah, we'd probably need an ordinance in place similar to the planning commission or whatever to just have some controls and
Right.
sort of mimic state law. So that'll be one thing. As far as setting up the 5013C, the city's accountants are probably the most equipped to do that. And they'll probably be familiar with these regulations too, to actually set up the legal entity.
Okay, right.
So.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
If I
Sure.
may, I've got a couple of questions, I
Sure.
guess. So you've already answered who might set up this 501c3, but I imagine the next steps into that, and also to take some pressure off the city for having to do everything, was to go ahead and establish who might want to initially be on that board, I suppose, to kind of help facilitate the establishment of that 501c3. Additionally, you know, I mean, they will have to, you don't have to create the bylaws from scratch. If you say there's so many other folks out there, there's bylaws to bring in.
I've got examples from other successful foundations that I'll be happy to share with Jay.
And
bring
also
for
your
review.
objectives, your primary objectives, because you've listed a lot of those. I mean, those will be great to have those all listed, so then as the board moves forward, it could kind of determine where those are. And my last question is, you said I love that you could take some of your state taxes and go, but you said there was a limit. What do you aware?
A statewide limit.
Statewide?
Yeah. Now, don't ask me how they're gonna keep track of
I
that.
don't know what that
and
means.
when they're gonna let everybody know they've reached their limit, but there is I forget the number, it's like
It's the $30 million statewide.
Yeah.
For individuals, it's $5,000 for a family, and I think $50,000 for a business
something like that.
is what they get
To defer,
to defer
take
their tax
taxes.
liability to the state, to the
Right.
foundation.
And the reason there's a statewide cap is because the state doesn't want all their money getting diverted to local entities.
Right.
You know, they're offering this, but there's gotta be a limit to it
Right.
before everybody
That's-
just starts giving it
yeah.
to Madison and not the state of Georgia.
But that's awesome. So and so it just shows, then, I mean, sorry, I'm not trying to be dense, but then you just show it up on your tax return to say, here's where my tax, as tax credit, let's say, or
Yes,
such and such.
but-
But it's $5,000?
Yes, but anybody that wants to donate, I'd say right off the bat, they'll need to talk to their tax professional first to make sure that they're within the bounds of the law.
Right. No, that's right. As you would say, and Jay would say too.
You're not offering tax advice?
Oh, come on.
I don't know if the chief mentioned this, but I know John brought it up when we were initially the chief brought this up to us, and there are some provisions in the state law that at least will calm some potentially unethical practices. For instance, when they donate money, they're donating to the foundation. They can't say, I'm donating it for X.
Yeah.
There's no strings attached to the money. You know, they can't say, I'm donating it so the chief can get a raise, you know.
Right.
It is to
Yeah.
the foundation. They don't get any discretion of where it goes, and the foundation
Right.
has the authority to divvy that up
Gotcha.
however they see fit.
Which is part of the reason why I don't believe that somebody from a representative of the government needs to be on the foundation's board of directors. I think it needs to be an independent entity.
Outside of the-
That way,
Yep.
they,
Which is
they
good,
have,
yes. That's good.
I agree.
Thank you so much, Chief. We look
Good.
forward to working with you, and Jay, get that drawn up for us. We
Wonderful.
appreciate that.
thank you.
Sure.
Thank
so
you.
much. H and I would talk about at our next work session that Councilmember Joyce wanted to talk about current lease laws and appointments for protocol or processing applications. Final question on flush, House Bill 581.
I will be extremely brief because y'all are welcome to ask me any questions, but considering today's the deadline to do anything and you don't have time to have public hearings, if y'all changed your minds to the last one, there's really not a whole lot y'all can do about it, but I'm happy to,
was the wish.
I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Well, except we know there could be postponed that deadline until May. And that's what I'm
I've also
understanding.
heard till next year, so.
So-
Yeah, so.
So yes and no.
But the mayor may know more about.
So we
where
got some
that's-
time. They talked about it. I think they're gonna sort of defer it down the road a little bit.
Yeah, which, you know, the cities or counties that opted out, that doesn't do a whole lot of good because they've already opted out. But my understanding from these is that they would have time to reconsider if
Right.
they want to. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're set and ready to go on this. Thank you.
A lease man, you got the lease, John? That was Karen?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a request that Karen Stapp was going to make to simply ask you to put the formal lease for Wheelhouse on the consent agenda for the next council meeting. You actually haven't taken a vote yet on that. But as you know, the Wheelhouse is in. I talked to a member of the board yesterday. They are very happy with the space. We're happy to have them. We have two entities in the building now producing more than $12,000 in annual rent, heretofore having been receiving nothing. And they're two great entities that work well with the city. So we're happy about that, and we'd just like you to take a formal vote on the lease at the next meeting.
So we can put this on our consent agenda, so the Madam Clerk, by the next meeting for a vote. Thank you so much, John.
Yeah.
Were you gonna give your report, John? You want to give your report?
Yes, I have two items. The first is just to follow up. We're all set to go and put the stormwater ordinance finally before you at the April meeting. This is some background information that you had asked for. If you have any questions about that, feel free to give me a shout or Aaron Wadley, and we can explain what it all means. The other issue is that our service delivery agreement with the county is coming up for renewal. And I've had several conversations with Adam Mestris, the county administrator, the county manager, and we need to begin a process of negotiations with the county. And what that means is that this allows the city to reflect in terms of what it is providing for services as opposed to what the county is providing for services. I think it's a good opportunity to kind of step back and say, are there things that we could do more collaboratively? Are there things that the city's doing that you would want the county to start doing? Are there things the county's doing that you're not happy with that you want the city to do? So this kind of gives us an opportunity. And so I have a copy of the existing agreement that I will provide to all of you. But I just wanted to say that statutorily, we need to start sitting down. And I just have to tell you, my sense is that this is a very volatile issue statewide, very volatile, where many times the cities and the county end up in court. I don't see that environment in place. We're working very closely with the county. I've talked to the county manager. It is his desire and my desire to get through this in a timely fashion. And but we need to know what your thoughts are in terms of collaboration with the county. There may be something that you have been thinking then maybe we could work with the county on it, whatever, or there may be something that you want the city to do and not the county or whatever. So this is the opportunity. I brought it up today just to plant the seed, and there'll be many conversations and discussions that Jay will be negotiating for us. But as I said, I don't get any sense that there's any hostility or any major issues, that we're working very well with the county at this time.
Thank you.
And that's it,
That's it?
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Well, there are no further comments. Thank you, John.
Short and
This
sweet.
ends our work session. Thank you so much for coming this morning.
Oh, thank you. All right, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, definitely let's sign that for the